So we have this Heroes and Monsters game, and if you're not familiar with like Pokemon and these kinds of games, then this might seem like a mystery to you. The description. So I just kind of wanted to make a video just going over what this is all about, and what it is like 8-bit style RPG game. An RPG stands for role playing game, and where that all started from, it has its roots in like Dungeons and Dragons, like which is a game that you play with your friends. You have like a dungeon master who's like the one who leads the adventure, rolls dice like based on like some probability. Like so he'll say, "Oh, you encountered a monster. What do you want to do? You have a sword and you have a bow." And then this guy over here, if it's his turn, he says, "I want to take out my bow." And then the bow has like a certain probability, and he rolls dice, and then he like attacks the monster, right? So like this was like a super like kind of nerdy game or whatever. I don't want to stereotype or anything like that, but that's what it was, right? Like back in the 80s and the early 90s. And then yeah, and then if it's he's kind of like this guy here, right? This comic book guy in The Simpsons was kind of like stereotyped over people who played like Dungeons and Dragons, right? Even his store like had the name like Dungeon in it, which is a reference to Dungeons and Dragons, right? So, and then like in the early '90s, this is kind of what came out, right, from the original Nintendo system, which is Final Fantasy One. I think we're on like Final Fantasy 35 or something now. But how does it work? You like walk around this like visual map, and you encounter people. You buy swords. You fight monsters, earn gold, and all of that. So this is like a electronic version of this guy here, right? So then we have Final Fantasy 3, which is like a game that was remixed, and I actually played it on the Nintendo DS, and I found it like uniquely interesting because like you had to like use strategy and technique and use certain weapons and certain combinations in order to build like defeat the bosses. So like you couldn't get past certain levels by just brute force, right? Like which you usually can in role playing games. You could usually like just like grind it out, build up your experience level, your attack level, and then destroy any boss, right? Just by brute force. But this game here was like that was an impossibility. So I thought that was really cool. And then we have like something like this, which is like Final Fantasy 12, and it's like more of like a cinematic adventure, right? And then they have cutscenes, and then this is the actual gameplay, right? But at its base and at its like core, we still have this, right, going on, and we still have this kind of like running the game engine, right? Like this is a 3D model, like put on top of a 2D board, right? It's like this guy has an X and a Y position. He walks around the screen. If he touches a certain item, he could pick it up based on the item's XY position and his XY position. So we have kind of the same dynamic going on. And if you want to think about the model in your mind, you want to think about this, right? So like we got this square board. Each board is broken up into like a block, right? Unit, and you can move forward one unit. You can move to the left and the right one unit. And if you get to the side of a monster, right, then you begin to fight. And then when you fight, there's like a menu that comes up, and it says something like here we go, right? It says something like attack or use a potion or run away. And so that's what we're going to like be making here in this model here, right, in this video game. And so this is like the first iteration of the game, and it's fairly simple. You might, we're going to be doing new things when we build it, so it'll be kind of complicated and, kind of twist your mind for a second. But after it's all said and done, you'll see that's kind of a simple version of this, right? And then we're going to come back to this after we learn about inheritance and polymorphism and stuff like that. And then we're going to make this more like this, right? And it'll be like a group activity. Well, not a group, but like I think pairs or threes. So this is kind of like step one in a longer process, and yeah, that's kind of what you want to think about when you're putting this together. Is that we're going to try to be recreating a text-based version of this, right? Like a turn-based attack system, walking around the map, right, and meeting people along the way who are going to tell you things, and you have monsters and people you need to attack and stuff like that.